Hi, in this video we are going to cover how to do some basic edits to your spooky photo. Since everybody's photo is a little bit different, these edits may not apply exactly the same way to your photo, but I just wanted to give you some ideas on how to edit these things. And we will cover photo editing a lot more in depth in the future. But here I am in Photoshop. My image is open. This is the image that I am using for my spooky photo. This is the one I captured for my spooky photo. In here, I could start with applying some adjustment layers. So here's my adjustments panel. If you don't see it right when you open your window, go to Window and click on Adjustments right there. In here, there are lots of options. One main one that we will use for this photo, just because it seems like black and white photos are a little bit spookier, is this black and white adjustment layer. So we can go ahead and apply that. If you just click on that little black and white button, it automatically does that for you. It also gives you the option. So even though it's black and white, you can adjust the way this is affecting certain color channels. So you can go ahead and play with those options if you want to. You might need to brighten your image a little bit. So you could come to brightness and contrast and pull up the brightness a little bit. The way I usually do that though is through curves. So I come into my curves. I feel like I have a little bit more control over it, and it does a very similar thing. Just like I said, I feel like I have more control over it. Okay, so go ahead and play with any of those adjustments that you need to. One of the other things that you might need to do to your image is crop it. So right up here is our crop tool. When you use this, make sure that you choose the correct option here. So these are my cropping options. If I want to keep it at the original ratio, which I do for this photo, I choose that. It will constrain the crop to the original proportions. So I couldn't get it squished down into a teeny tiny little sliver. It constrains those proportions. So right now in my image, I have some problem areas. So I have this stool here that I would like to not have there. So I could do some cropping of my image just to get that out, and I'll do that a little bit. I like the way the hair is right here, but I don't necessarily like the way it's wrapping around here for whatever reason. That might be personal opinion a little bit. So I'm going to crop that in a little bit tighter on the right side, and then I'm also going to try to get some of that stool out on the left. So something like that. I think I like maybe even a little bit tighter on the left side. We'll crop off part of the elbow. So something like that. When I'm happy with my crop, then I can go ahead and hit the enter key on my keyboard or this little check mark up here. And there we go. So now we're on our way to the way I want this photo to look. The next thing I need to do is, I got a lot of that stool out, but not quite all of it. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to use some of the tools that we just learned. So when we talked about removing unwanted objects in photos, this is exactly why we did that little exercise. So I'm actually going to use the patch tool. We'll see how that one works. Sometimes you have to try a couple of them before they work, or before they work the way you want them to. So I selected that area and now I'm just going to fill it. I actually might do something like that. Actually, I don't really like the way that looks. So I might fill that in just with part of the wall. So there we go. I'm going to hit Control D on my keyboard to deselect. Now I still have some fixing up to do. That did not do a perfect job of getting rid of that stool over there, but I kind of, it's well on the way. So I might come back in with my spot healing brush, kind of smooth out some of these areas and see what I can do. That's already better right there. So I need to come in and make some minor adjustments, and I will do that later. The other things I'm going to do are, I'm going to add a couple of different elements to this. So this is already an okay image. I'm pretty happy with it, but I feel like I could add another sort of layer of interest to it. To do that, I'm going to use a website. We use this website sometimes for images that we are unable to capture ourselves. I usually try to recommend that you take all of your own photos because you learn a lot by doing so, but there are some times that you just can't do that. It's not feasible for you. So unsplash.com, go ahead and go there, and what I'm looking for right now is an image of some flames, and I have lots of options. So I will choose, let's see, what should I choose? I'll choose this first one actually. And if you could see over here, there's a little download button right there. I'll go ahead and download that. And there it is. Now I'm just going to click and drag it in to my document and release right there. Okay, so you can see when I place that into my document, it turned into black and white. That is just because of those adjustment layers that I've already added. So I'm going to go ahead and place this in, hit the check mark. And now I need to fix that problem. So I could click and drag that up to the top. And now these adjustment layers here are only affecting the layers that are below it. So they're just affecting that background layer. They're not affecting my flames. So if this works out okay for you, then great. If not, you might need to clip your adjustment layers to your image. So press and hold the Alt key on your keyboard till you see your cursor turn to that little arrow plus a square, and go ahead and clip those to that image. Now those adjustment layers are only affecting this layer. So I'll convert that to a regular layer so I can show you what I mean. So right now you can't see it because this is covering it up, but this is still in color. And actually, let me just show you real quick. You wouldn't do this, but I want to show you what I mean. So I just erased part of that top image, what was my background image, and now I'm revealing what's below it, and notice that is in color because these adjustment layers are only affecting this layer because I clipped those adjustment layers to this layer right here. Okay, I'm just going to undo that, so Control Z. Okay, so now I'm actually going to drag that back up to the top. I'll use my move tool and move that down, and that's all well and good, but it's covering up a lot of my image, right? So I don't want that. I want to mask out this background, and that we've also done, right? So we haven't done it for a little while yet, but we have done it in the past. So I'm just going to click on my black background in this image, and I need to invert my selection. So I'm going to hit Control Shift I, or also select and inverse. Okay, and now I'm just going to apply a mask to that, and I'm masking out all of those black areas. So the placement of it is kind of where I want it, but not exactly. So I'm going to move it around a little bit, and I'm actually probably going to copy that. So I want it over here, but I also want it to fill this space too. And I could make it bigger, right? So that would be one of my options. But I just need it to fill more of the area. So I'll make it bigger and I will copy it. So I'm pressing and holding the Alt key on my keyboard and clicking and dragging that over to copy it. And the other option to do that would be you could click and drag this down to that new layer button, and that would create a copy as well. And that is only a couple of the different ways that you can do that. Okay, so now I have my flames in there. I'm pretty happy with the way they're looking. Maybe I'll overlap them just a little bit more. All right, and then the next thing I want to do is I want to add some more texture to this image. So I have some imagery up here and some down here, but this whole area is pretty blank. There's a lot of blank space there. I'm going to go to Unsplash again, and this time I'm going to I'll search for decay. So I'm looking for something that looks kind of old and maybe rusty or kind of used up, just something to add some good texture to that image. This one is perfect right here, so we have some rusty paint. I'm going to download that, and I'll place that into my document. Okay, so now that's in there. I'm going to increase the size of it, so I just moved it first, and now I'm going to make it bigger. So I'm pressing and holding the Shift key while clicking and dragging from a corner. I'll make it about like that, and now it's covering up a lot of my image. So what I can do is I can change the blending modes. So this is an easy way to change the way layers interact, and it takes a bit of experimentation before you get the results you want, and sometimes you don't always even get the results you want. Maybe you have to go about doing this in a different way. But I'm just going to go ahead and look through some of these blending modes. I've seen some that I've kind of liked already, but I think that one might be it. Color dodge. So I'll probably actually look through some more just to make sure. So now I like the way this is looking on the wall, but I think maybe it's a little bit too strong. So I'm going to pull the opacity down just so that it's there but not quite as overpowering. What I could do too is I could actually cover most of this image with that texture. So I could just hit Control T on my keyboard for free transform, and I could cover most of the image. I want the flames on top, so those aren't covered with that texture. So my flames are on top in the layers panel, and I'm gonna pull that texture down just a little bit so it's not so noticeable. I like the way this is affecting her hair. I might come in and edit this. I think these spots are a little bit too bright yet, but you kind of get the idea. So I'm adding different layers and different imagery to make my photo as interesting as possible. And that's not to say that adding more is always better. So already now with this many things in here, this many images, I'm teetering on the point of potentially maybe too much. So maybe I need to scale this back just a little bit, or maybe make some of these parts a little bit less noticeable, or something. Just keep that in mind. More isn't always more. Sometimes less is more. So don't do everything you possibly can do. Do what you think will make your image look the best. So those are some tips on just editing your photos and making them look a little bit more interesting for this project. If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.